The Leadership Masterclass, Faith-Inspired, Purpose-Driven Leadership by David Fenter. About the book. Leadership is more than strategy, more than titles, and more than chasing success. The Leadership Masterclass invites you on a journey into faith-inspired, purpose-driven leadership that transforms lives and communities. Whether you lead a family, a business, a movement, or a nation, this book will equip you to discover your purpose and calling as a leader. Build leadership that multiplies beyond yourself. Untangle the knots that hold back transformation. Lead with humility, faith, and global vision. Leadership is not about monuments. It's about movements. This is your call to rise, serve, and lead. About the author. David Fenter is a global leader and servant leadership advocate, passionately committed to uplifting the informal economy and building transformative leadership movements. As global president of the Informal Economy Development Forum, he has trained and mentored leaders across continents. Inspired by the life of his father, David Dennis Fenter, an informal business owner who built a thriving enterprise from humble beginnings, David carries a vision to empower leaders who serve with humility, faith, and purpose. Dedication. This book is lovingly dedicated to my father, David Dennis Fenter, a man of humility, faith, and resilience, who, with nothing but his God-given skill and unshakable determination, turned hardship into hope. Though his highest grade passed was only grade 4, he carried within him a wisdom no classroom could ever teach. From the age of 12, he worked to support his parents, laying down his own dreams to lift others up. In 1995, with no capital, no formal training in business, and no proper equipment, only his extraordinary talent as a panel beater and his refusal to give up, he began repairing accident-damaged vehicles from our garage. That humble start grew into excellent panel beaters, a thriving business that today employs more than 30 people and continues to invest in communities and enterprises that flourish because of his vision. But my father was more than a businessman. He was a mentor, a leader, and above all, a servant of God. He treated people with dignity, loved those who worked alongside him, and taught me that true leadership is rooted in humility, service, and faith. God was at the center of everything he did. On April 21, 2025, he was suddenly called home. Yet he left us not unprepared, but equipped, trained to carry forward the work he began, to grow what he built, and to live out the values he instilled in us. His life reminds me of the scripture, "The stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone." His story is the story of the informal economy, of ordinary people with extraordinary courage, showing us that our limitations and financial state do not define our future. He stands as a beacon of hope that with faith, resilience, and hard work, we can rise above every challenge and create something lasting. Dad, your sacrifice gave me the foundation to walk in my purpose, to serve, to uplift, and to empower others walking the same road you once walked. You are my mentor, my leader, my anchor, and my inspiration. This book is for you. Forward. In every generation, the world waits for leaders. Not the kind who chase power, wealth, or influence for themselves, but the kind who rise with vision, serve with humility, and create lasting transformation. Yet leadership has become one of the most misunderstood words of our time. Too often, it is reduced to titles, achievements, or the ability to control. But true leadership is not about climbing higher. It is about going deeper. This book is born out of a conviction that leadership is a calling, not a career. It is a sacred trust. And the greatest model we have ever seen is Jesus Christ. At the same time, leadership in the 21st century requires structure, systems, and change management that works across cultures and continents. That's why this book weaves together CITASA, Jesus' leadership rhythm of call, train, authority, send, accountable, with Noster's model for managing complex change, creating a holistic leadership framework that is both spiritual and practical, timeless and timely. Whether you are leading a family, a business, a community, or a global mission, this book is for you. It will challenge you, stretch you, and equip you. But most of all, it will remind you of something powerful. You were called for this. Welcome to the Leadership Masterclass. Chapter 1. Call, chosen with purpose, vision. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Zen proverb. Every great movement begins with a call. Not a job posting. Not a corporate appointment. A call. When Jesus began his leadership journey, he didn't gather resumes or conduct interviews. He walked by fishermen, tax collectors, ordinary men, and said simply, "Follow me." He called them, not because of what they had, but because of what he saw in them. Leadership, at its core, is a response to a call. The power of the call. A true call is different from ambition. Ambition is self-driven. Calling is purpose-driven. Ambition asks, "What can I get?" Calling asks, "What can I give?" When you are called, you know it. You may not always have clarity, but you feel the weight of it. Something in you refuses to stay silent when you see injustice. Something inside of you aches when others settle for less. Something compels you forward, even when the road is uncertain. That is calling. Sitasa plus Noster, a unified path. As we move forward, we will explore a unique leadership framework that blends spiritual principles with practical tools. Sitasa, call, train, authority, send, accountable. Jesus' leadership model, focused on people, purpose, and transformation. Noster's model for managing complex change, a modern framework showing that for change to last, leaders need vision, skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan. Together, these models form a powerful roadmap for leaders in every sector. They ensure that you are not only called but trained, empowered, resourced, sent, and held accountable for lasting impact. Call in the Sitasa framework. In Jesus' leadership model, the call is the first step. He ministered to multitudes, but he chose 12 to walk closely with him. The call was not random, it was intentional. For us, call means choosing to align with a higher purpose. It means saying yes to the invitation to lead, even when you feel unqualified. For leaders in the IEDF, the call is clear: to unite the informal economy and to fight poverty through servant leadership. That is not just an organizational mission, it is a divine summons. Vision, Noster's first element. Noster's model for managing complex change begins with vision. Without vision, people are confused. They don't know why they are moving where they are going or why it matters. The call is what provides the vision. It answers the why. Why am I here? Why does this matter? Why must I keep going when it gets hard? Vision is the antidote to confusion. It rallies leaders, unites communities, and keeps movements alive through hardship. For the IEDF, the vision is clear: a world where the informal economy is not trapped in poverty, but thriving with dignity, opportunity, and inclusion. What happens without vision? If you lead without a clear call, you may still gather people, but you will lose them quickly. Without vision, leaders are confused. Without purpose, teams drift into distraction. Without clarity, movements dissolve into noise. This is why every leadership journey must start with the call. It defines the mission. It sets the direction. It ignites the fire. Leaders are called, not manufactured. Titles don't make leaders. Positions don't make leaders. Paychecks don't make leaders. Leaders are called. When Moses was called, he resisted, "Who am I, that I should go?" But the call was not about Moses' strength, it was about God's purpose. When David was called, he was a forgotten shepherd boy. When Esther was called, she was an orphaned exile. When Peter was called, he was a fisherman. Leadership does not begin with human qualifications. It begins with divine intention. So if you feel unqualified, uncertain, or unprepared, you are in good company. That's how most called leaders begin. The IEDF call. The IEDF's mission is not simply an idea, it is a calling. To unite leaders in 100 countries, to train 10,000 servant leaders in 365 days, and to transform the informal economy is not something you stumble into. It is something you are called into. This call does 3 things. 1. It gives clarity. You know why you are here. 2. It gives courage. You keep going when it gets hard. 3. It gives community. You realize you are not alone. Recognizing your call. How do you recognize your call? It often begins with a burden. something in the world disturbs you deeply. It often feels bigger than you. You wonder, who am I to do this? It often requires faith. You won't have every resource at the start, but you will have conviction. The call is not always loud. Sometimes it is a whisper. Sometimes it is hidden in your daily life, waiting for you to notice. But once you recognize it, you cannot unhear it. A personal story. When I was a teenager, my parents, ordinary people with ordinary jobs, would spend weekends serving in hospices and poor communities. They cooked soup, prayed with the sick, and offered comfort to those forgotten by society. At first, I didn't understand it. It felt small, unnoticed. But one visit changed everything for me. I saw death up close and I wanted to run. But my parents stayed. They loved. They served. Years later, I realized, those small acts were shaping me into the leader I am today. They were teaching me that true leadership begins in the hidden places. That no act of service is too small. That leadership is not about being seen, but about being faithful. That is why this journey matters. Because somewhere in the world, your leadership, your faithfulness, will shape a future leader too. How call plus vision work together? CITASA plus Noster. CITASA call equals purpose. Noster vision equals clarity. When you bring them together, you discover the foundation of leadership. You are called by purpose and you are guided by vision. This prevents confusion and ensures everyone knows why they are here. Chapter 2. Train, Equipping the Inner Circle, Skills. Give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. African proverb. Once Jesus called his disciples, he did not send them out immediately. He first trained them. He walked with them, taught them, challenged them, and modeled what leadership looks like in action. This is the second step in the CITASA model, train. Training is where potential becomes preparation. It is where followers become leaders. It is where vision becomes practice. Why training matters? Many people respond to a call with passion. They burn with excitement. But passion without preparation is dangerous. Passion can start a fire, but without skill, it can burn out of control. Training takes raw passion and shapes it into focused power. Jesus knew this. That's why his ministry with the disciples was not a weekend workshop. It was 3 years of walking together, learning, practicing, failing, and trying again. Leadership is not just taught in classrooms. It is taught through relationship. Training in the CITASA framework. Training is not about information transfer. It is about transformation. Jesus didn't just lecture his disciples. He explained the kingdom knowledge. Demonstrated healing, teaching, and service, modeling. Involved them in feeding the hungry, praying for the sick, and engaging with outcasts, practice. Debriefed with them after experiences, reflection. That is holistic training. For us, training means building leaders who not only know the mission but have the skills, character, and confidence to live it out. Noster's second element, skills. In Noster's model, the second ingredient for successful change is skills. Without skills, people experience anxiety. They may see the vision. They may feel the call. But when they don't know how to act, fear and doubt creep in. That is why training is non-negotiable. It bridges the gap between calling and capability. What happens without skills? Without skills, leaders freeze. They hesitate. They lose confidence. They know why but not how. They want to lead but they don't feel equipped. Their hearts are willing but their hands are weak. This leads to anxiety, and anxiety stalls progress. Training for IEDF leaders. For the IEDF, training is at the very heart of our mission. We cannot hope to transform the informal economy without equipping leaders with the right skills. That's why Project 10,000 exists. To train 10,000 leaders in 100 countries by 2030. The key skills for IEDF leaders include cross-cultural leadership, leading across languages, traditions, and nations. Negotiation and advocacy, standing up for communities and influencing policy. Financial literacy and inclusion, equipping informal workers with tools for economic empowerment. Digital literacy, leveraging technology to connect, organize, and scale impact. Servant leadership, leading with humility, empathy, and vision. These are not just nice-to-haves. They are essential competencies for leaders driving global change. Training is ongoing, not once-off. One of the biggest mistakes in leadership is thinking that one training session is enough. True training is continuous. Jesus didn't teach his disciples one lesson and walk away. He trained them through repeated experiences, building layer upon layer of confidence and wisdom. Leaders must adopt the same approach. Constant learning, constant mentoring, constant practice. A leader who stops learning stops leading. Multiplication through training. Jesus' goal was never to remain the only teacher. His goal was to multiply himself through his disciples. He said, "You will do even greater works than these." That is the purpose of training, to create leaders who can lead beyond you, to multiply the mission into future generations. Training is not about control. It is about release, personal reflection, the power of mentorship. When I look back at my leadership journey, the moments that shaped me most were not lectures. They were experiences. They were mentors walking beside me, showing me how to handle failure, how to recover from mistakes, how to believe in myself when I felt overwhelmed. The leaders who trained me didn't just give me tools, they gave me courage. And that is what true training does. It doesn't just build skills. It builds confidence. How train plus skills work together? TASA plus Noster. TASA train equals equipping. Noster skills equals confidence. Together, they transform willing followers into capable leaders. They prevent anxiety by ensuring people don't just know the vision, they know how to live it out. Chapter 3. Authority, Empowerment that Motivates, Incentives. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. African proverb. One of the most radical things Jesus ever did was give away authority. He didn't just call and train his disciples. He trusted them with his mission. He gave them authority to heal the sick, cast out demons, preach the kingdom, and represent him in places he would not physically go. This is the third step in the CTASA model, authority. Authority is empowerment. It is the moment when followers are trusted to act, not as spectators, but as leaders. Why authority matters. Many leaders make the mistake of clinging to control. They teach, they demonstrate, they inspire, but they never release authority. The result? Burnout for the leader and dependency for the followers. Jesus showed us a different way. He empowered his disciples long before they were perfectly ready. They still made mistakes. They still misunderstood him. But he trusted them enough to try. Authority communicates two powerful truths. 1. I trust you. 2. You are capable. And trust creates motivation like nothing else. Authority in the CTASA framework. Authority is not about hierarchy, it is about stewardship. Jesus did not give his disciples titles. He gave them trust. He did not hand out promotions. He gave them power. For leaders, giving authority means delegating responsibility, entrusting decision-making, and empowering others to act on behalf of the mission. This is not loss of power, it is multiplication of power. Noster's third element, incentives. In Noster's model, the third key to managing change is incentives. Without incentives, people resist change. When people don't see why their contribution matters, or how they benefit from it, they lose motivation. Resistance builds. Authority, when given properly, becomes a powerful incentive. It says, your voice matters. Your role counts. You are recognized. For IEDF leaders, incentives are both personal and collective. Personal, recognition, decision-making power, leadership pathways. Collective, community impact, economic empowerment, dignity, and hope. When leaders feel valued and empowered, resistance fades. Motivation rises. What happens without authority or incentives? Without empowerment, leaders stall. They feel sidelined, voiceless, and disconnected. Without incentives, they ask, why bother? No authority, disempowerment. No incentives, resistance. Movements cannot grow where people feel untrusted and unrewarded. Authority for IEDF leaders. In the IEDF context, authority means leaders are trusted to initiate projects in their communities. They are empowered to influence policy for the informal economy. They are given opportunities for global recognition through awards, conferences, and testimonies. They experience tangible benefits, access to networks, markets, mentors, and funding opportunities. Authority plus incentives create ownership. Ownership fuels transformation. A story of empowerment. I remember one young leader in our network who started with almost nothing, just a vision to help small street traders in her city. At first, she lacked resources, confidence, and recognition. But when she was empowered, given authority to lead a local project, and trusted with resources, something shifted. She rose with boldness. Within a year, she had mobilized dozens of traders, built partnerships with local government, and created pathways for financial inclusion. All she needed was empowerment. Authority unlocked her potential. Authority is risky, but necessary. Of course, giving authority is risky. People will make mistakes. They may fail. But here's the truth, not giving authority is riskier. It creates bottlenecks, stifles innovation, and kills morale. The only way to multiply leadership is to release it. How authority plus incentives work together, CITASA plus NOSTR. CITASA authority equals empowerment. NOSTR incentives equals motivation. Together, they overcome resistance. They create leaders who are not only trained but trusted, not only skilled but motivated. Personal reflection. Think about the first time someone truly trusted you with responsibility. How did it feel? Chances are that trust made you rise to the occasion. That is the power of authority. When you give it, you don't just delegate tasks, you dignify people. You say, I believe in you. Chapter 4. Send, Mission in Action, Resources plus Action Plan. The path of leadership is not paved with titles, but with footprints of service. David Fenter. Calling prepares you. Training equips you. Authority empowers you. But leadership cannot stop there. The fourth step in the CITASA model is send. Jesus never trained his disciples just to keep them close. He trained them so that he could send them. He gave them authority and then released them to act. Sending is what turns preparation into impact. Why sending matters? Too many leadership programs stop at training. Leaders gather knowledge, sharpen skills, and even feel empowered, but they never step into action. Jesus refused to let his disciples stay in the classroom. He said, Go. Go heal the sick. Go preach the kingdom. Go serve the poor. Go and make disciples of all nations. True leadership is never about staying comfortable. It's about stepping into mission. Send in the CITASA framework. Sending is not abandonment. It is activation. Jesus didn't simply dismiss his disciples. He sent them with clarity, with purpose, and with mission. He gave them direction, strategy, and encouragement. He prepared them for both success and failure. As leaders, sending means commissioning others to act. It means releasing them into communities, into organizations, into nations, with confidence that their leadership will multiply impact. NOSTR's fourth and fifth elements, resources plus action plan. NOSTR's model adds two essential ingredients for sustainable change, resources and an action plan. Without resources, leaders feel frustration. Without an action plan, leaders experience false starts. Sending requires both. Resources are the practical tools, funding, networks, and support leaders need to succeed. Action plans provide the roadmap, milestones, and structure to turn vision into reality. Without these, leaders may have passion and authority but still fail to see results. What happens without resources or an action plan? Imagine training a carpenter but giving him no wood, no nails, no tools. He may be skilled and passionate, but he cannot build. That is the frustration of being sent without resources. Or imagine telling a runner to win a race without giving them the route. They may run fast but in the wrong direction. That is the futility of being sent without a plan. Both lead to disillusionment. both kill momentum. Sending in the IEDF context. For the IEDF, sending is where the mission truly comes alive. It's where leadership training turns into transformation on the ground. When leaders are sent, they go with resources, access to funding, digital platforms, mentors, networks, and partnerships. Action plans, clear strategies like Project 10000, training and deploying 10,000 leaders in 100 countries by 2030. Sending is not about sending people out alone, it is about sending them out supported. This ensures leaders can implement projects, mobilize communities, and influence policy without being held back by lack of means or direction. A story of sending. I recall one leader in our global network who had a powerful vision to transform waste pickers in his city into entrepreneurs. For years, he had the passion. He even had the skills. But he lacked resources and a plan. He tried small initiatives, but nothing stuck. When he was finally equipped with a clear roadmap and a modest grant, everything shifted. He organized cooperatives, built partnerships, and trained waste pickers to access markets. Within 2 years, lives were transformed. He was the same person, with the same heart. But being sent with resources and a plan turned vision into reality. Sending is multiplication. Jesus said, "As the Father has sent me, so I send you." Sending multiplies leadership. It ensures the mission is not confined to one person or one place. It spreads influence across communities, cities, and nations. Movements grow not by gathering more people into one room, but by sending more leaders into the world. How Send plus Resources plus Action Plan work together? CITASA plus NOSTA. CITASA Send equals Mission in Action. NOSTA Resources plus Action Plan equals Empowered Execution. Together, they prevent frustration and false starts. They ensure leaders are not just inspired, but effective. Personal reflection. Being sent is both exhilarating and terrifying. It means stepping into the unknown. It means leaving safety and stepping into responsibility. But it is also where leaders come alive. Because leadership was never meant to stay in theory, it was meant to shape reality. Chapter 5. Accountable Leadership with Follow-Through, Sustainability. Trust but verify. Russian proverb. After calling, training, empowering, and sending his disciples, Jesus did not disappear. He followed up. He asked questions. He debriefed their experiences. He corrected mistakes. He celebrated progress. This is the final step in the CITASA model, accountable. Accountability is what turns action into sustained transformation. Without it, leaders risk drifting, losing focus, or repeating mistakes. With it, leaders refine, improve, and grow stronger. Why accountability matters? Leadership is not just about starting well. It is about finishing faithfully. Without accountability, vision fades. Skills stagnate. Authority gets misused. Sending leads to disconnection. Accountability is the thread that weaves all the steps together. It ensures that leaders remain aligned with the mission and that the mission keeps producing real results. Accountability in the CITASA framework. Jesus modeled accountability consistently. After sending his disciples out 2 by 2, he gathered them back and asked, "What happened?" He corrected them when they misunderstood their authority, like when they wanted to call down fire on a village. He reminded them that success was not about power, but about humility and service. For us, accountability means creating spaces for reflection, feedback, and growth. It means asking, what worked? What failed? What must we learn? How do we adjust for greater impact? Noster's holistic approach, all elements combined. In Noster's model, accountability is not listed as a separate element, but it is the integrating force. Vision avoids confusion. Skills prevent anxiety. Incentives overcome resistance. Resources prevent frustration. Action plans avoid false starts. But accountability ensures all of these are sustained over time. Without accountability, even the strongest framework eventually unravels. What happens without accountability? Without accountability, leaders drift into distraction. Teams stop learning from mistakes. Success is celebrated, but failures are buried and repeated. The mission becomes noise without measurable impact. Accountability is not about punishment, it is about growth. It is about ensuring that every action produces fruit, and that fruit remains. Accountability for IEDF leaders. For the IEDF, accountability is built into everything we do. Leaders are not only trained and sent, they are expected to report back, share lessons, and refine strategies. This happens through regular reporting on progress, challenges, and outcomes. Feedback loops that allow leaders to learn from each other across countries. Monitoring and evaluation systems that measure impact on communities. Global storytelling that highlights both successes and struggles. Accountability is what makes the mission sustainable. It keeps us aligned with our global purpose, uniting the informal economy and eradicating poverty. A story of accountability. I once worked with a leader who launched a promising project in his community. At first, everything looked successful. Photos were taken, reports were written, and excitement was high. But when accountability structures kicked in, when he had to share actual outcomes, it became clear that while attendance was strong, impact was shallow. People had shown up, but lives hadn't changed. Instead of hiding this, he embraced the accountability process. He adjusted his approach, added new training modules, and partnered with others. Within a year, the project not only grew in numbers but began producing real transformation in families and businesses. Without accountability, the project might have looked impressive but produced little. With accountability, it became truly impactful. How accountability plus sustainability work together? CITASA plus NOSTR. CITASA accountable equals follow through. NOSTR all elements aligned equals sustainable change. Together, they create leadership that lasts, not just moments of activity, but movements of transformation. Personal reflection. True accountability requires humility. It means admitting weaknesses, learning from mistakes, and staying aligned with the bigger picture. It is not always comfortable, but it is always fruitful. The greatest leaders are not those who claim perfection, but those who are willing to be corrected. Chapter 6. Faith as the foundation. Faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. Indian proverb. Every structure rests on a foundation. You can build tall towers, design complex systems, and gather massive crowds. But if the foundation is weak, everything eventually collapses. The same is true of leadership. Vision, skills, incentives, resources, and action plans are essential. Calling, training, empowerment, and accountability are powerful. But without a strong inner foundation, leaders burn out, lose their way, or misuse their influence. For servant leaders, that foundation is faith. Why faith matters in leadership? Faith is not just a religious word. It is the confidence that what you cannot yet see is still possible. It is the belief that your purpose is bigger than your present circumstances. Leadership demands faith because you will face obstacles bigger than your resources. You will walk into rooms where you feel unqualified. You will have moments where the vision seems impossible. In those moments, faith is what holds you. Faith in the life of Jesus. Jesus' leadership was fueled by faith. Faith in the Father, faith in his mission, faith in the disciples he chose. Think about it. He entrusted the future of his movement not to scholars or political elites, but to fishermen, a tax collector, and ordinary men. He had faith that with God's power, they would become world changers. And history proved him right. Faith as fuel for resilience. Every leader will encounter resistance. You will be misunderstood. You will be criticized. You will fail. Without faith, you will quit. Faith turns obstacles into opportunities. It whispers, "This is not the end, it is preparation." It keeps you steady when the ground shakes. It allows you to rise again when circumstances push you down. Faith and the CITASA model. Faith runs underneath every step of CITASA. Call, you believe that you were created for a purpose. Train, you trust that what you are learning will one day bear fruit. Authority, you have faith to empower others even when they're not perfect. Send, you release people in faith, trusting God with the results. Accountable, you stay faithful to the mission even when growth feels slow. Faith is the unseen thread that makes the model come alive. Faith and Noster's model. Noster's framework deals with practical elements: vision, skills, incentives, resources, action plans. But behind each is an act of faith. Faith to keep communicating the vision even when confusion arises. Faith to keep training even when progress is slow. Faith to keep motivating when resistance builds. Faith to keep resourcing when funds seem scarce. Faith to keep planning even when outcomes are uncertain. Faith is what turns structure into spirit. Personal story: faith in the unknown. I remember a time when the IEDF had almost no funding. The mission was clear, the leaders were ready, but the resources were not there. On paper, the movement should have stalled. But I felt a conviction: we must keep moving. We pressed forward in faith, trusting that provision would come. And it did. Unexpected partnerships formed. Doors opened in places we never anticipated. Leaders rose up to carry the vision. Faith didn't just sustain us, it multiplied us. Faith across beliefs. Now let me pause here. You may be reading this as a Christian, or you may come from another tradition. This journey is not about forcing one belief system. But here's what I know: every great leader needs faith. Whether it is faith in God, faith in a higher cause, or faith in the potential of people, leadership requires believing in something bigger than yourself. That is what sustains you when the applause fades and the weight grows heavy. The dangers of faithless leadership. When leaders lose faith, they turn to fear, manipulation, or control. They begin chasing titles instead of serving people. They compromise their integrity for temporary wins. History is full of leaders who had skills, power, and strategy, but no faith. Their legacies crumbled. Faith keeps leaders grounded in humility and lifted in hope. How to strengthen your foundation of faith. 1. Reflect daily. Take time to pause, pray, or meditate on your purpose. 2. Remember the call. Revisit the moment you knew you were meant for more. 3. Surround yourself with faith builders. Walk with people who believe in you and remind you of the bigger picture. 4. Celebrate small wins. Each success is evidence that faith is not in vain. 5. Anchor in scripture or wisdom. For me, the life of Jesus is my anchor. For you, it may be scripture, values, or timeless truths that guide your heart. Chapter 7. The Heart of a Servant Leader. He who wants to lead must first learn to serve. African proverb. At the core of transformational leadership is not charisma, strategy, or even vision. It is the heart. And the true heart of leadership is service. When Jesus' disciples argued about who among them was the greatest, he gave them a shocking lesson. He said, "Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." This redefined leadership forever. Greatness is not measured by how many people serve you. It is measured by how many people you serve. Servant leadership versus celebrity leadership. In our world, leadership is often confused with celebrity. Leaders are celebrated for their wealth, their influence, their image. But servant leadership flips the script. Celebrity leadership asks, "How many followers do I have?" Servant leadership asks, "How many people am I lifting?" Celebrity leadership focuses on platforms. Servant leadership focuses on people. Celebrity leadership seeks status. Servant leadership seeks sacrifice. The world does not need more celebrities. It needs more servants. The strength of humility. Servant leadership does not mean weakness. In fact, humility is one of the greatest strengths a leader can have. Humility allows leaders to listen more than they speak, learn from others regardless of their position, admit mistakes and grow from them, elevate others without feeling diminished. Arrogance isolates leaders. Humility multiplies them. The servant leader in Sitasa. Servant leadership is embedded in every part of Sitasa. Call. Servant leaders recognize the call is not for personal gain but for collective good. Train. They invest in others not to control, but to multiply. Authority, they use authority to lift others, not to dominate. Send, they release people into mission even when it costs them. Accountable, they stay answerable, modeling integrity and transparency. Service is not an add-on. It is the DNA of the CTASA model. The servant leader in Noster's model. Noster's framework is practical, vision, skills, incentives, resources, action plans. But if these are not rooted in servant leadership, they risk becoming tools for control instead of transformation. Vision without service becomes self-promotion. Skills without service become manipulation. Incentives without service become bribery. Resources without service become exploitation. Action plans without service become bureaucracy. Service keeps leadership human. A story of servant leadership. When I think of servant leadership, I think of Rashida Muller, the first president of SITA, the South African Informal Traders Alliance. Rashida carried the weight of being the leader of the first organized structure for the informal sector in South Africa. But her leadership was never about position or prestige. It was about people. Whenever an informal trader faced a challenge, whether they were a member of SITA or not, Rashida would get personally involved. She didn't send others. She didn't pass the problem down the line. She picked up the phone, she made the calls, and she stayed engaged until the matter was resolved. I witnessed this many times. Traders in crisis would reach out, and instead of delegating, Rashida would contact local officials, provincial representatives, even national ministers if necessary. She fought relentlessly to ensure that the dignity and livelihood of every informal trader was respected. I often wondered, why wouldn't she delegate this to someone else? After all, she was the president. But that was Rashida's heart. For her, leadership was service. And service meant standing with people in their moment of need, not from a distance, but up close. She won most of those battles. Not because she had titles or wealth, but because she had persistence, courage, and a heart for her people. From Rashida, I learned lessons that no lecture could teach and no textbook could capture. She mentored me into leadership not by theory, but by example. Her actions embody the essence of servant leadership. A leader's highest role is to serve. The paradox of service. Here is the paradox. The more you serve, the greater your influence. People follow leaders who care. They trust leaders who sacrifice. They give their best to leaders who put others first. The world often tells us, push yourself forward. Servant leadership whispers, lift others up and you will rise too. Servant leadership in the IEDF context. For the IEDF, servant leadership means seeing the informal worker not as a statistic, but as a person with dignity. Building leaders not for personal glory, but for collective impact. Sharing resources equitably, ensuring no community is left behind. Measuring success not only by numbers trained, but by lives transformed. Servant leaders don't just aim for growth. They aim for justice. The danger of selfish leadership. History shows us the damage of selfish leadership. Leaders who pursued power for themselves left behind broken nations, disillusioned followers, and scars that lasted generations. But history also shows us the beauty of servant leadership. Gandhi, Mandela, Mother Teresa, they lived for others. And their legacies continue to inspire. Selfish leaders are remembered for their downfall. Servant leaders are remembered for their sacrifice. How to cultivate the heart of a servant leader. 1. Ask daily, who can I serve today? 2. Practice hidden service. Do things for others that no one sees. 3. Celebrate others' success. Learn to rejoice when others rise higher than you. 4. Stay connected to the pain. Never grow so distant that you forget the struggles of those you serve. 5. Keep your ego in check. Remember, leadership is not about you. Chapter 8. Leading Through Change, the Knots We Must Untangle. When the knot tightens, you must not cut the rope, you must learn to untie it. African proverb. Every leader eventually discovers this truth. Leading change is hard. People don't resist change because they are stubborn. They resist change because something critical is missing. And when those elements are missing, progress ties itself into knots. Dr. Tim Noster developed a model for managing complex change that identifies 5 essential elements every change effort must have. 1. Vision. 2. Skills. 3. Incentives. 4. Resources. 5. Action plan. When any of these are missing, the result is not just failure. It is resistance in a very specific form. Without vision, confusion. Without skills, anxiety. Without incentives, resistance. Without resources, frustration. Without an action plan, false starts. As leaders, we must learn to untangle these knots. Not 1. Confusion, missing vision. When vision is unclear, people don't know why they're moving or even where they're going. Confusion spreads. Meetings are held, energy is spent, but no one knows what success looks like. This is why vision is always the starting point. Leaders must paint a clear and inspiring picture of the future. For IEDF leaders, the vision is simple and bold: to unite the informal economy, reduce poverty, and create dignity and opportunity. Vision gives meaning to sacrifice. Without it, people will not endure the cost of change. Not 2. Anxiety, missing skills. Even when vision is clear, people can feel paralyzed if they don't have the skills to contribute. They know the why, but they don't know the how. Anxiety sets in. Training eliminates this. Equipping people with the competencies they need, whether it is negotiation, advocacy, digital literacy, or servant leadership, transforms anxiety into confidence. This is why training is not optional in leadership. Leaders must build capacity in others if they expect change to last. Not 3. Resistance, missing incentives. Sometimes people see the vision and even have the skills, but they ask, "What's in it for me? Why should I change?" When there is no personal or community benefit, resistance hardens. This is where incentives matter. Incentives don't always mean money. They can mean recognition, empowerment, growth opportunities, or the tangible benefits of a better future. For IEDF leaders, incentives often look like recognition awards, access to new markets, mentorship and funding opportunities, testimonies of success that inspire hope. When people see that change benefits them and their communities, resistance dissolves. Not 4. Frustration, missing resources. Even motivated and skilled leaders become frustrated if they lack the tools to succeed. Imagine trying to build a house with no bricks, or run a school with no books. Without resources, leaders feel powerless. That's why resourcing is an act of servant leadership. It says, "I believe in you enough to invest in you." In IEDF, resources come through partnerships with governments, NGOs, and businesses, digital platforms for networking and learning, local hubs that provide ongoing support. When leaders have resources, they move from frustration to fulfillment. Not 5. False starts, missing action plan. Even with vision, skills, incentives, and resources, change can stall without a roadmap. Leaders start strong but lose momentum. Teams get busy, but impact remains shallow. This is the danger of false starts. An action plan prevents this. It provides clear steps, timelines, and accountability. It ensures that inspiration translates into impact. For the IEDF, action plans look like Project 10000 with its 2030 timeline, step-by-step guides for community programs, accountability structures that measure progress. Without a plan, leaders drift. With a plan, leaders deliver. The personal reflection, learning the knots. I have personally experienced each of these knots. I've seen the confusion of unclear vision. I've felt the anxiety of being unprepared. I've faced resistance when incentives weren't clear. I've been frustrated by lack of resources. And yes, I've started projects that fizzled out because there was no plan. These lessons taught me something simple. Leadership is as much about untangling as it is about inspiring. When we identify what's missing, we don't just remove obstacles, we release potential. The unified model, TASA plus Noster. Here's how TASA and Noster work together to untangle the knots. Call, vision, prevents confusion. Train, skills, prevents anxiety. Authority, incentives, prevents resistance. Send, resources plus action plan, prevents frustration and false starts. Accountable, sustainability, keeps everything aligned over time. Together, they form a leadership framework that is both spiritual and practical, personal and systemic. Chapter 9. Movements, not monuments. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Chinese proverb. Too often, leaders are remembered for what they build for themselves. Their organizations, their empires, their personal success. These are monuments. They may look impressive, but monuments don't move. They stand still. The world doesn't need more monuments. The world needs movements. Movements are alive. They spread. They multiply. They outlast the leader. The difference between a monument and a movement is simple. Monuments glorify the leader. Movements transform the people. Why movements matter? When Jesus led, he never built monuments. He didn't construct palaces or write his name on stone. Instead, he invested in people. And 2,000 years later, his movement continues to grow. History teaches us the same. Gandhi didn't build a monument. He sparked a movement for freedom. Nelson Mandela didn't chase statues. He led a movement for justice. Mother Teresa didn't seek glory. She birthed a movement of compassion. Movements last. Monuments fade. The temptation of monuments. Every leader faces the temptation to build monuments. To create structures that look impressive, but don't create real change. To chase recognition instead of transformation. Why do leaders fall into this trap? Ego, the desire to be remembered for greatness. Insecurity, the need to prove themselves. Short-sightedness, the focus on today's applause instead of tomorrow's impact. But monuments crumble. Movements endure. Movements in the Sitasa framework. Sitasa is designed not for monuments, but for movements. Call, leaders are called to a shared purpose, not a personal empire. Train, leaders are equipped so they can equip others. Authority, leaders empower others, not hoard control. Send, leaders release people into action, not hold them captive. Accountable, leaders build systems that sustain growth beyond themselves. Movements multiply because they are not dependent on one leader. Movements in Noster's model. Noster's elements, vision, skills, incentives, resources, and action plans are the tools that sustain movements. Vision unites the people. Skills build capacity at every level. Incentives create buy-in across communities. Resources fuel the mission. Action plans ensure momentum continues beyond one generation. Without these, movements stall and monuments take their place. The IEDF as a movement. The IEDF is not meant to be a monument. It is a movement. Its vision is bigger than any one leader. Its mission, to unite and empower the informal economy, is not tied to one personality, but to a global family of leaders. When we launched Project 10000, we did not set out to build an institution with prestige. We set out to release a movement of leaders who could transform their communities across 100 countries. That is why we don't measure success by buildings or offices. We measure it by leaders raised, lives changed, and communities empowered. A personal reflection, legacy versus ego. Early in my leadership journey, I thought success would be measured by titles or recognition. But I soon realized, when I am gone, those things will not matter. What will matter are the people I served, the leaders I equipped, and the vision I passed on. That is legacy. That is movement. How to build a movement, not a monument. 1. Invest in people, not platforms. Movements live in people, not in buildings. 2. Multiply leaders, not titles. A movement thrives when leadership is shared. 3. Release control. Movements require empowerment, not micromanagement. 4. Think generationally. What you build should outlast you. 5. Anchor in purpose. Movements must be tied to a mission bigger than one individual. Chapter 10. Global Leadership, Across Borders and Cultures. One finger cannot lift a pebble. Hopi proverb. Leadership in the 21st century is no longer confined to one city, one country, or even one continent. Today's leaders must think globally while acting locally. In this masterclass, we've gathered leaders from across the world. Different accents, different skin tones, different cultures, different faiths, yet all united by one truth. Purpose knows no borders. Global leadership is not about uniformity. It is about unity in diversity. The reality of a global room. When we gather in the IEDF masterclass, we see leaders from 6 of the 7 continents. Each brings their own background, experiences, and struggles. A leader in South Africa faces different challenges from a leader in Brazil. A leader in India approaches community differently than one in Europe. Yet, they are connected by a common thread, the desire to serve and transform their communities. Global leadership is the art of weaving those differences into strength. Why global leadership matters? 1. The problems we face are global. Poverty, inequality, climate change, migration, these challenges cross borders. They cannot be solved by one nation alone. 2. Opportunities are global. Technology, trade, and education connect us like never before. Leaders who think globally unlock doors for their communities. 3. Movements must be global. A local vision can inspire, but a global vision transforms. When servant leaders connect across borders, they create waves of change that ripple across nations. The barriers to global leadership. Leading across borders is not easy. Leaders face obstacles such as cultural misunderstandings, different values, and communication styles can cause conflict. Language barriers, words can be misinterpreted, creating division instead of unity. Different paces of development, what works in one region may not fit in another. National interests, governments, and systems can limit collaboration. But these barriers are not walls. They are bridges waiting to be built. Principles of global leadership. 1. Respect diversity. Don't expect everyone to think, speak, or lead like you. Diversity is strength, not weakness. 2. Find common purpose. The what may differ, but the why unites us. Servant leaders rally around shared values like dignity, justice, and service. 3. Listen first. Leaders who listen across cultures gain wisdom. Leaders who impose lose influence. 4. Lead with humility. Global leadership is not about being the loudest voice in the room, but about creating space for every voice. 5. Build trust. Trust is the currency of cross-border leadership. It is earned slowly but lost quickly. Always protect it. Sitasa in global leadership. Sitasa becomes even more powerful in a global context. Call. Identify leaders from different nations who share the same heartbeat. Train. Share knowledge and adapt it to local realities. Authority. Empower leaders to act within their own cultures. Send. Release leaders back into their communities to multiply impact. Accountable. Create structures that keep leaders connected globally while responsible locally. Noster's model in global leadership. Managing global change requires clarity in all 5 elements. Vision must be inclusive, transcending cultural divides. Skills, training must adapt to multiple contexts. Incentives, benefits must make sense locally as well as globally. Resources must be equitably distributed across nations. Action plan needs flexibility to adjust to local realities while moving toward a shared goal. When applied globally, Noster's model untangles barriers that could otherwise fragment a movement. A personal reflection. Leadership without borders. When I first stepped into international leadership, I thought my South African experience would automatically translate across borders. I quickly learned it did not. I had to unlearn the idea that my way was the way. Instead, I had to listen, adapt, and learn from leaders in other contexts. That shift humbled me and expanded me. Global leadership is less about exporting your model and more about exchanging wisdom. It is not about dominance. It is about dialogue, the vision of a global movement. Imagine this, a network of servant leaders across 100 nations, each anchored in purpose, trained in Sitasa, resourced through global partnerships, and united by accountability. That is not a dream. That is the movement we are building. It will not matter what language you speak, what passport you hold, or what culture you come from. What will matter is this: you carry a vision, and you are willing to serve. That is global leadership. Chapter 11. Accountability, the leader's sacred trust. Responsibility is the price of greatness. Winston Churchill. Leadership is not a privilege, it is a sacred trust. Every leader carries responsibility, not only to achieve results, but to steward people, resources, and vision with integrity. Without accountability, leadership drifts into arrogance, abuse, and corruption. With accountability, leadership flourishes into trust, credibility, and lasting impact. Accountability is not optional. It is the backbone of servant leadership. Why accountability matters? History is full of leaders who started well but ended in disgrace because they abandoned accountability. They believed they were untouchable, above the rules, or beyond correction. Their fall was not caused by enemies, but by a lack of accountability. Accountability matters because it protects leaders from pride and blind spots. It builds trust with followers and communities. It ensures that vision translates into real results. It keeps leaders aligned with values, not just outcomes. Unaccountable leaders may rise quickly, but they fall even faster. Accountability in Scripture. Jesus himself modeled accountability. He constantly checked in with his disciples. "Who do you say that I am?" He sent them out and then asked what they had done with the authority given to them. Even in his mission, he was accountable to the Father's will. He prayed, he listened, and he obeyed. Jesus, the greatest leader in history, embraced accountability. How can we as leaders ever dismiss it? The dangers of avoiding accountability. When leaders resist accountability, 3 dangers emerge. 1. Isolation. They cut themselves off from feedback, losing perspective. 2. Arrogance. They begin to believe they are the source of their own success. 3. Abuse of power. Without checks, power corrupts, and followers suffer. This is why accountability must be built into leadership systems, not left to chance. Accountability in CTASA. Accountability is the final step in the CTASA framework. Call, you are accountable to the one who called you. Train, you are accountable to equip others well. Authority, you are accountable for how you use power. Send, you are accountable to the mission, not your comfort. Accountable, you are answerable for both results and character. Without accountability, CTASA collapses into ego-driven leadership. With accountability, it becomes sustainable servant leadership. Accountability in Noster's model. In Noster's framework, accountability strengthens each element. Vision, are we staying true to it? Skills, are we applying what we've learned? Incentives, are we aligning benefits with mission, not manipulation? Resources, are we stewarding them responsibly? Action plans, are we delivering what we promised? Accountability ensures the knots of leadership remain untangled. The practice of accountability. Accountability is not a concept, it is a practice. Leaders must deliberately place themselves in systems of accountability. Some practical ways include mentorship, being answerable to a wiser, more experienced leader. Peer circles, regular check-ins with fellow leaders for honest reflection. Transparent reporting, clear communication about goals, progress, and failures. Feedback loops, actively seeking input from those you serve. Spiritual alignments, staying accountable to God through prayer and reflection. The leader who avoids accountability is already on the path to failure. A personal reflection, mentored into accountability. In my own journey, I did not learn accountability from textbooks. I learned it from mentors, leaders like Rashida Muller, who not only served people but made herself accountable to them. She didn't hide behind her title. She listened to traders' struggles. She reported back to them. She was answerable not only to her executive board, but to the very people she represented. Watching her taught me that accountability is not weakness. It is strength. It is what makes a leader trustworthy. Accountability and the informal economy. In the informal economy, accountability has special weight. Millions of traders and workers depend on leaders to advocate for their rights, secure their livelihoods, and protect their dignity. If leaders in this space are unaccountable, the most vulnerable suffer. If leaders are accountable, entire communities rise. That is why IEDF builds accountability into every level of leadership. Leaders are not just given authority, they are held responsible for what they do with it. How to build accountability into your leadership. 1. Ask for oversight. Don't wait to be corrected, invite it. 2. Welcome feedback. Feedback is not an attack, it is a gift. 3. Be transparent. Share progress, but also share struggles. 4. Submit to values. Never let success become an excuse to compromise integrity. 5. Stay connected. Accountability thrives in community, not in isolation. Chapter 12. Knots and Sitasa in Action, Case Studies of Change. When spider webs unite, they can tie up a lion. Ethiopian proverb. Leadership theory is valuable, but transformation happens when theory meets practice. Sitasa and Noster's framework are not abstract ideas. They are living tools designed to guide leaders in real situations. In this chapter, we will look at case studies where the knots of leadership were untangled through Sitasa and servant leadership principles. These stories show how ordinary leaders, facing extraordinary challenges, applied vision, training, authority, mission, and accountability to bring change. Case Study 1. The Trader's Right to Trade. A group of informal traders in a South African city faced eviction from their trading space. Local officials argued that the traders were unregistered and a nuisance. Confusion and anxiety spread. Many feared losing their only source of income. The knot. Traders lacked vision of their rights. They lacked skills to negotiate with officials. They had no resources for legal support. The intervention, TASA in action. Call. Leaders within the trader community were identified to represent the group. Train. Workshops were held on rights-based advocacy and communication. Authority. These leaders were recognized by their peers and given the mandate to act. Send. Equipped with knowledge, they approached local government to negotiate. Accountable. They reported progress back to the traders, maintaining trust. Outcome. The traders were not evicted. Instead, they entered a dialogue process with government, which led to formal recognition and the creation of a structured trading plan. Confusion was replaced with clarity, and anxiety turned into confidence. Case Study 2. Youth Entrepreneurship and False Starts. At a youth program, hundreds of young people were trained in entrepreneurship. They left excited, full of ideas, and ready to start businesses. But within months, most projects collapsed. The knot. The program provided vision and skills, but no resources or action plan. This led to frustration and false starts. The intervention, TASA in action. Call. Young leaders with strong ideas were identified for further mentorship. Train. They were guided on business planning, budgeting, and resilience. Authority. They were given small seed grants to act on their vision. Send. They launched businesses with clear milestones and ongoing support. Accountable. Regular check-ins ensured they stayed on track. Outcome. Several youth-led businesses are now thriving, providing jobs and inspiring peers. The lesson. Training without resources and accountability produces false starts. But when all elements align, young leaders flourish. Case Study 3. Cross-border leadership in action. An IEDF leader in East Africa sought to connect with peers in West Africa to share solutions for informal market development. However, cultural differences and logistical challenges created resistance. The knot. Leaders shared vision, but lacked skills for cross-cultural collaboration. Resources for travel and translation were limited. The intervention, TASA in action. Call. Leaders from both regions committed to the vision of continental collaboration. Train. Cross-cultural communication training was provided. Authority. Each leader was empowered to represent their region authentically. Send. Virtual exchanges replaced costly travel, making collaboration possible. Accountable. Joint progress reports kept both sides aligned. Outcome. A cross-border mentorship program was launched, sharing best practices between regions. What began as resistance transformed into synergy. Case Study 4. The Rosh-Ida Muller Example. As the first president of SIDA, Rosh-Ida Muller often dealt with local officials who sought to restrict informal traders. On many occasions, officials issued blanket bans on street trading. The knot. Traders faced confusion about their rights. They felt anxiety because their livelihoods were at risk. Government resistance was strong. The intervention, TASA in action. Call, Rosh-Ida stepped in personally, embodying servant leadership. Train, she educated traders about their rights. Authority, she carried the mandate of SIDA, giving her weight in negotiations. Send, she approached officials and even ministers directly, fighting for recognition. Accountable, she always reported back to the traders she represented. Outcome. In many cases, bans were overturned or replaced with fairer policies. Traders gained confidence in their rights and deepened trust in their leadership. Rosh-Ida's approach demonstrated how TASA is not just theory, but a lived framework of action. Lessons from the case studies. 1. Vision must always be clear. Without it, leaders and communities drift. 2. Skills must be cultivated. Training transforms anxiety into empowerment. 3. Incentives keep people committed. If people see no benefit, resistance rises. 4. Resources fuel sustainability. Leaders cannot thrive without the right tools. 5. Action plans prevent failure. Without structure, passion fizzles into false starts. 6. Accountability sustains trust. Communities follow leaders who are answerable. Chapter 13. Mentorship and Multiplication, Raising the Next Generation of Leaders. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. Greek proverb. If leadership ends with you, then it was never leadership, it was performance. True leadership is not measured by what you achieve in your lifetime, but by the leaders you raise who will carry the mission forward. This is the principle of multiplication. Jesus demonstrated this perfectly. His public ministry lasted only 3 years, but during that time, he invested deeply in a small group of disciples. Those disciples went on to build a movement that continues 2,000 years later. His model was not addition. It was multiplication. The power of mentorship. Mentorship is not about teaching information. It is about imparting wisdom, character, and courage. A mentor says, "Walk with me. Learn not only from what I say, but from what I do." Knowledge can be found in books. Skills can be learned in training. But wisdom, the integration of knowledge and character, is transmitted through mentorship. I have been shaped by mentors who lived servant leadership. Leaders like Rosh-Ida Muller, who taught me that leadership is about service, not status. Those lessons could not be taught in a classroom. They were caught, not taught. The multiplication principle. When leaders mentor others, they move from addition to multiplication. Addition says, I will impact 10 people. Multiplication says, I will raise 10 leaders, and each of them will impact 10 more. 1 becomes 10. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes 1,000. That is how movements are built. This is why the TASA model emphasizes train and send. Leaders are not meant to hoard followers. They are meant to raise leaders and release them. Barriers to mentorship. Many leaders fail to mentor because of fear of replacement, worrying that a mentee will overshadow them. Lack of time, believing they are too busy to invest in others. Insecurity, thinking they have nothing to offer. But true leaders are secure enough to empower others. They know their legacy is not threatened when others succeed, it is strengthened. Mentorship in the informal economy. In the informal economy, mentorship is vital. Many traders and entrepreneurs don't have access to business schools or formal training, but they can be mentored by leaders who have walked the road before them. A trader teaching another how to source goods. A leader showing a younger peer how to negotiate with local government. An elder passing on values of resilience, integrity, and service. This is grassroots mentorship, and it multiplies leadership where it matters most. The role of accountability in mentorship. Mentorship is not one-directional. A true mentor does not only instruct, they also hold their ments accountable. They ask, "What have you done with what I've taught you?" At the same time, mentors remain accountable to their ments. They model integrity, because nothing destroys trust faster than hypocrisy. Case example, Project 10000. Project 10000 is not designed to only train individuals. It is built on multiplication. The vision is not just to raise 10,000 leaders, but to empower them to raise thousands more in their communities. Every leader who is mentored becomes a mentor. Every leader who is sent carries the responsibility to send others. This is how a global movement is built. How to become a mentor who multiplies. 1. Identify potential leaders. Don't just look for talent. Look for character and willingness. 2. Invest deeply. Share your wisdom, not just your instructions. 3. Model servant leadership. People learn more from who you are than what you say. 4. Release responsibility. Give ments real opportunities to lead. 5. Encourage them to mentor others. Multiplication is the goal. A personal reflection. My mentorship journey. When I look back, I see my mentors' fingerprints all over my life. Leaders who believed in me when I doubted myself. Leaders who gave me responsibility before I felt ready. Leaders who corrected me when I strayed. Now, I realize, I carry a responsibility to do the same for others. Mentorship is not a favor, it is an obligation of leadership. And the greatest honor is not when my name is remembered, but when those I mentored surpass me. Chapter 14. The Future of Leadership, Vision 2030 and Beyond. Tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. African proverb. Every generation of leaders must ask themselves, what future are we building? Leadership is not only about solving today's problems. It is about shaping tomorrow's possibilities. If our leadership is truly servant-hearted, it must leave behind more than programs and projects. It must leave behind a vision that others can carry forward. That vision, for us, is Vision 2030 and beyond. Why leaders must think long-term. Too many leaders are trapped in the urgency of the moment. They focus only on today's challenges, today's numbers, today's applause. But great leaders step back and ask, what legacy will I leave in 5, 10, or 50 years? How will today's actions shape the next generation? What must I sacrifice now so others can thrive later? Short-term leaders build quick wins. Long-term leaders build lasting transformation. The future of leadership, from hierarchies to networks. The world is changing, and so must leadership. Traditional leadership models were built on hierarchies, one person at the top directing those below. The future belongs to networks. Leadership is shared, collaborative, and global. Servant leaders will not sit above people but move among them, connecting vision bearers across nations, sectors, and communities. This is why the IEDF is not building monuments, but movements. The goal is not to create a single institution that holds power, but to release a network of leaders across 100 nations who embody servant leadership in their own contexts. Vision 2030, a picture of the future. By 2030, we envision a world where -10,000 servant leaders have been trained, equipped, and released globally. Every continent has thriving networks of informal economy leaders who are empowered and recognized. Poverty reduction is not just a dream but a measurable reality in communities touched by servant leadership. Mentorship chains connect generations of leaders, ensuring sustainability. Unity in diversity is modeled by leaders from every race, culture, faith, and gender, working side by side. Movements of change ripple outward, transforming not just economies, but families, schools, and governments. This is not a distant dream. It is already beginning. The role of CITASA in the future. The CITASA model provides a timeless framework for leaders of the future. Call. Identify leaders who hear the call of purpose. Train. Equip them with knowledge, skills, and wisdom. Authority. Empower them to act with confidence and integrity. Send. Release them into mission, across communities and borders. Accountable. Anchor them in accountability to ensure sustainability. If we continue to multiply leaders through CITASA, Vision 2030 will not only be possible, it will be inevitable. The role of Noster's knots in the future. As we scale globally, we must remember the knots of leadership that can entangle movements: confusion, anxiety, resistance, frustration, and false starts. Future leaders must become skilled knot breakers. Casting vision to prevent confusion. Training relentlessly to overcome anxiety. Creating shared incentives to break resistance. Building partnerships to provide resources. Designing action plans to prevent false starts. By untangling these knots, leaders ensure the future remains clear and unstoppable. The spiritual foundation of the future. As leaders, we must never forget that the future does not belong to us alone. We are stewards of God's people and God's vision. Our responsibility is to remain humble, prayerful, and aligned with His purpose. Vision 2030 is not only about numbers. It is about destiny. It is about shaping the future in partnership with the one who holds the future. The personal reflection. Planting trees you'll never sit under. I often reflect on this African proverb. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. That is the essence of servant leadership. We do not serve to be comfortable today. We serve to make the future better for those who will come after us. When I think of Vision 2030, I know I may never see all of its fruit. But that does not matter. What matters is that we plant the seeds now, faithfully, courageously, and sacrificially. How to lead toward 2030 and beyond. 1. Think generationally. Make decisions with your grandchildren in mind. 2. Invest in young leaders. They will carry the movement forward. 3. Build systems, not just events. Systems outlast personalities. 4. Stay global in vision. Don't shrink your dream to your own borders. 5. Remain rooted in purpose. Purpose is the only fuel strong enough for long journeys. Chapter 15. A call to action, walking the journey together. If you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. African proverb. Leaders, we have walked a journey. From discovering the heart of servant leadership, to learning how to untangle the knots of change, to building movements that outlast monuments, we have been preparing for one thing: action. This is not just a book to be read. It is a manual to be lived. The world does not change because leaders read about leadership. The world changes when leaders rise, act, and serve. The call before us. The call of this moment is clear. To embrace servant leadership as our model. To live out the CITASA framework. Call, train, authority, send, accountable. To untangle the knots that hold back progress. Confusion, anxiety, resistance, frustration, and false starts. To multiply leaders through mentorship, ensuring the movement never stops. To carry Vision 2030 forward, building a future of dignity, justice, and opportunity. This is the call before us. Not for tomorrow. For today. Why we must walk together. Leadership is never a solo act. Lone rangers may inspire for a moment, but movements require community. Even Jesus, whom I believe to be the Son of God, did not lead alone. He chose 12 to walk with him, to learn, to grow, and to carry the mission after him. We too must walk together. Across continents, across cultures, across differences, united by purpose. No single leader can transform the world. But together, a community of servant leaders can. What this journey demands. This journey will demand courage to face resistance. Sacrifice to serve others before yourself. Faith to believe in what you cannot yet see. Perseverance to keep going when results seem slow. Servant leadership is not the easiest path, but it is the most meaningful one. A personal commitment. As I close this book, I want to make a personal commitment to you. I will walk this journey with you. Not as the global president of IEDF. Not as someone with titles or authority. But as a fellow leader, a servant, a brother in this global movement. My prayer is that as you close these pages, you will not close the vision. You will step into action. Chapter 16. About the Informal Economy Development Forum, IEDF. It is not what you look at that matters. It is what you see. David Fenter. Who we are. The Informal Economy Development Forum, IEDF, is a global movement dedicated to unlocking the dignity, potential, and prosperity of the world's informal economy. Born out of the belief that leadership must serve the most overlooked communities, the IEDF unites informal business owners, workers, and leaders across nations into one voice, one movement, and one mission. The informal economy is often seen as invisible, yet it represents the heartbeat of countless families and communities. Millions of men and women in this space are entrepreneurs, creators, and providers. The IEDF exists to transform this space from one defined by poverty and vulnerability into one marked by opportunity, inclusion, and sustainability. Our mission is simple yet profound: to unite, equip, and empower the informal economy to eradicate poverty and create sustainable livelihoods across the globe. Through training, mentorship, advocacy, and global collaboration, the IEDF works to raise servant leaders who will stand in the gap for informal workers and entrepreneurs, ensuring they are not left behind but included in the future of economic growth and development. Our vision. The IEDF envisions a world where the informal economy thrives with dignity, inclusion, and opportunity. We see a future in which informal businesses are not marginalized, but recognized as a driving force of economic transformation, shaping nations, strengthening families, and building communities of resilience and hope. Our purpose. The purpose of the IEDF is anchored in leadership, service, and transformation. We exist to raise leaders, train and mentor servant leaders in every nation, champion inclusion, advocate for policies and systems that recognize and support informal workers, create opportunity, build pathways for entrepreneurship, access to resources, and sustainable growth, build movements, not monuments, multiply leaders who can multiply others, ensuring this mission outlasts us. The call to action. The IEDF is not simply an organization. It is a movement, a family of leaders from every corner of the globe who believe in one truth: poverty is not destiny. As you close this book, we invite you to open your heart to the call of this mission. Whether you lead in business, community, or government, you are part of the story. You are part of the solution. You are part of the movement. Together, we will walk in faith, serve with humility, and lead with purpose until every informal worker and entrepreneur is free to thrive. This is our call. This is our mission. This is the IEDF. Chapter 17. Putting it into practice, building your Community Development Committee, CDC. The best way to predict the future of your community is to create it together. Congratulations, you are ready to lead. You have reached the end of this journey. Through every chapter, you have been equipped with principles of faith-inspired, purpose-driven leadership. You've discovered the power of CTASA, call, train, authority, send, accountable. You've wrestled with the reality of complex change through the SIRA framework, vision, skills, incentives, resources, action plan. But knowledge without practice is unfinished. Leadership only becomes real when it is lived out. This final chapter is not more theory, it is your invitation to act. Why a Community Development Committee, CDC? Every community is rich in potential but often tangled in the knots of poverty, unemployment, and lack of opportunity. A Community Development Committee, CDC, is the local structure that unties those knots. The CDC brings together people of vision and action to mobilize resources for local transformation, build unity across families, entrepreneurs, faith leaders, and civic actors, create direct connections to the IEDF global network, where opportunities, support, and partnerships are shared. Step 1. Apply the SIRA model to start. Use SIRA as your action guide. Heavy checkmark vision. Define a clear, inspiring vision for your community, e.g., creating a thriving local economy where every family flourishes. Heavy checkmark skills. Identify the skills already present in your community. Map out leaders, entrepreneurs, teachers, tradesmen, organizers, and youth. Heavy checkmark incentives motivate involvement by showing the benefits, global recognition, access to resources, and being part of the IEDF transformation movement. Heavy checkmark resources gather what is already in your hands, meeting venues, digital tools, volunteers, and local partnerships. Heavy checkmark action plan. Write down the first 90-day plan of the CDC. Keep it simple and measurable. Example, host 2 community meetings, register on the IEDF marketplace, and identify 3 local projects to launch. Step 2. Form the CDC with CTASA leadership. Use CTASA as your framework for people selection. Who feels the pull of responsibility for your community? Invite them. Train, equip them with the leadership principles from this book. Authority, give each person a clear role and responsibility. Send, commission the CDC to represent the community with courage. Accountable, establish systems of transparency, reporting, and trust. Step 3. Build the CDC executive structure. A CDC without structure cannot grow. To succeed, your CDC must establish a clear executive team. Below is the recommended framework. Chairperson provides vision, leadership, and strategic direction. Represents the CDC in official matters. KPI leads the CDC to achieve its annual goals, ensures alignment with IEDF vision. Deputy chairperson supports the chairperson and ensures continuity in leadership. Steps enduring absence. KPI oversees smooth functioning of subcommittees. Secretary manages records, minutes, and official correspondence. KPI ensures accurate documentation of meetings and timely communication. Deputy Secretary assists with documentation, logistics, and administration. KPI keeps operations organized and responsive. Treasurer oversees finances, budgeting, and accountability of resources. KPI produces transparent financial reports and ensures responsible use of funds. Organizer coordinates meetings, mobilization, and logistics. KPI ensures high participation and smooth execution of activities. Media and Communications Officer manages storytelling, press, social media, and public engagement. KPI grows community visibility and ensures alignment with IEDF messaging. Training and Development Coordinator designs and oversees capacity building, leadership development, and skills programs. KPI trains new members and ensures ongoing leadership growth. Each of these roles requires 3 disciplines. 1. Commitment to service. Leadership is responsibility, not privilege. 2. Transparency, clear communication, and accountability. 3. Collaboration. Decisions are made for the good of the community, not self-interest. Step 4. Register your CDC with the IEDF marketplace. Once your CDC is formed, take it global. Register your CDC on the IEDF marketplace so it can be connected to leaders, opportunities, and resources worldwide. Why register? Gain visibility in the IEDF global network. Access international support, partnerships, and funding opportunities. Be part of a movement uniting communities for global impact. Extra incentive. Registered CDCs receive free access to certified, high-quality online training programs provided by IEDF. These programs equip your team with practical leadership, management, and entrepreneurship skills to strengthen your impact. Certification. Once your CDC has been successfully registered and uploaded to the IEDF marketplace, you, the reader, will also qualify for a certificate of completion, officially recognizing your leadership journey and commitment to servant leadership. Where to register? The process is simple. Download the IEDF web app and complete your registration. Step 5. Take your first action. Don't wait for perfect conditions. Your community doesn't need another plan. It needs your first step. Host your first community meeting. Share your vision. Begin your 90-day action plan. Celebrate small wins. Remember, transformation begins not when the world changes, but when you act. A final word. Leadership is not about monuments. It's about movements. Today, you are no longer just a reader of this book. You are a builder of a movement. Your next step is clear. Form your CDC. Register it on the IEDF marketplace. Unlock global opportunities and training. And then proudly receive your certificate of completion as recognition that you did not just learn, you led. Together, let us transform communities across the world, lifting people out of poverty, unlocking potential, and building a future where servant leadership shapes generations to come.